This is the Nazi elite, the SS. And this is a pagan religious ritual based on their twisted ideas.
The Nazi Party was not a political party the way we understand it. It was a cult, and you're being brainwashed into a cult.
We have to make sense of these belief systems, right? How did the Nazis think? We have to get sort of into their heads.
That's an area that historians have not wanted to go. They don't want to go into the bowel of the beast.
The SS cult dreams of remaking an ancient, sinister world, where Aryan supermen wield magical powers, and lesser races are their slaves, where pagan gods are worshipped with blood, and the power of the Holy Grail is harnessed to destroy the enemies of Adolf Hitler.
To us today, it sounds absolutely bizarre, but believe it, because people do believe in the unbelievable.
From their castle headquarters, the SS search for ancient supermen in Tibet, for the remnants of their ancestors' magic war weapons.
Achtung, lösen!
For proof they are the master race, and that their rightful destiny is to rule the world.
These were the people running one of the best military operations the world had ever known. And yet these were people who were psychotic. They didn't need scientific proof for what they believed in.
It's 7 decades since Adolf Hitler and his henchmen spread their evil around the world. The time has come to open the Nazi Gospels.
The Nazi Gospels justified spilling blood.
It's 1939, and in a castle in the heart of Hitler's Germany, an extraordinary ritual is taking place. This is an initiation ceremony into the fraternity of the SS. An initiation which embodies the Nazi Gospels. Gospels of a dark new faith.
This is tantamount to a satanic ceremony. And at the same time, it's liberating, because now you don't have to pay any attention to all of the religious rituals, all of the religious dogma you've been brought up with.
It's like tearing out the pages of the past and putting new ones in. And this is what the Nazi movement was all about.
This ritual takes place by order of one man, the commander of the SS, Heinrich Himmler.
Himmler's idea was to create a new cult, a new state religion. And the SS was going to be the priesthood of that religion. The SS was going to embody everything that they believed in as Nazis.
Standing before the altar is a young SS colonel, and next to him, an initiate to the Nazi cult. The pagan priest hands her a dagger, symbolizing her admission into the SS Brotherhood. Then bread and salt, symbolizing the German race and homeland, which the SS have vowed to protect. At the climax of the ritual, they receive a copy of the Nazi Bible, the book by the man who is both prophet and god of the Nazi cult, the Führer, Adolf Hitler.
Towering over the whole enterprise is Hitler, the new political messiah, the one who is going to save Germany.
Hitler has been master of Germany since 1933. If Hitler is the focus of the Nazi cult, Heinrich Himmler is its high priest. Since before the Nazis' rise to power, he has commanded their elite protection squad, or Schutzstaffel, known to history by its initials, SS. Himmler is the editor-in-chief of the Nazi Gospels, And these are his words.
We must settle accounts with this Christianity, this greatest of plagues that could have happened to us in our history, which has weakened us in every conflict.
Himmler is an absolutely key player, the most powerful man after Hitler, really, in the Third Reich, and he creates the SS really as an elite.
For thousands of years, it has been the mission of this blonde race to rule the earth and again to bring it happiness and culture.
This ritual is vital preparation for Himmler's ultimate dream of spreading his Nazi gospels around the world. This ritual is a pagan Nazi wedding.
In contrast to the former state and the church, persons who want to marry are being advised and tested for suitability to marry and genetic health.
These two blonde, blue-eyed young Germans are Himmler's ideal kind of couple. Their marriage symbolizes the first and most important Nazi gospel, the gospel of the master race. It's the late 1800s. In Germany, it's a time of fascination with the occult.
This was the era of seances, when it became trendy for people to invite a medium over after dinner to contact the spirits of the dead.
Thousands joined secret occult societies.
People could get away from the rather stiff formality of Victorian drawing rooms and talk about the Orient, talk about Hindus, talk about fascinating feats of fakirs who could float in the air and things like that.
It wasn't only Germans who were attracted to the mysteries of the occult.
This sort of proliferation of secret societies existed not only in Germany, but in the United States, in Britain, other places in Europe.
In cities like New York and London, it's all pretty harmless. But not in Germany.
It got mixed up with an older tradition that was concerned with the German folk, or people. The German folk was, in a way, a mystical concept of what the people represented.
Across Germany and Austria, secret societies meet to debate a key question. Just who are the German people? Their answer, that the Germans are descended from an ancient race, known as Aryans.
What defines the Aryan is really their look, their appearance, right? So they're strong, they're powerful, they're muscular, they are blonde, they are brave in battle.
It's kind of like a comic book. They're going to be superheroes, Superman.
The Aryan mythologists started to describe the new martial warrior type as some kind of blonde beast lusting for booty and prey.
Superheroes, blondish, strong, culture creators, a distinctly superior race.
In fact, there never has been any such thing as an Aryan race. But that didn't stop all kinds of myths about so-called Aryans. Some said they'd migrated into northern Europe from Tibet, or from Atlantis, the ancient city lost beneath the ocean, or from a mysterious island called Tula.
Tula referred to an ancient Nordic paradise where the Aryan race was supposed to have, from which they were supposed to have descended. So this was a cold, snowy, icy heaven.
The cults idealized Tula as a Nordic equivalent of the tropical Garden of Eden in the Bible.
Tula became almost the idea of a bastion of traditional values which could be rediscovered and then re-exported back into Germany and the modern world.
ideas about ancient Aryans become more and more bizarre and more popular. One cult even claims that the Aryans were actually gods.
And suggested these gods had had extraordinary powers of telekinesis and telecommunication, thought transfer, all these things based on their godlike divine powers.
As the descendants of godlike ancient Aryans, the cultists believe that modern Germans can one day rediscover these powers.
The idea that there was within the human body a kind of bioelectric energy that could be found, that could be summoned through the proper initiations and the proper rituals. And that there were groups of humans who had the power over this sacred energy, and they could direct this energy as a weapon anywhere they liked. And then if you could just learn through rituals and through initiation how to control this power, you could become unstoppable. You wouldn't need regular weapons. You wouldn't need cannons. You wouldn't need guns or planes or even rockets. You could direct this energy at an enemy and destroy them.
The cults say the Aryans lost these powers by committing a cardinal sin.
Because of blood mixing, because of race mixing, because the Aryans, originally gods, had wickedly and foolishly mixed their blood with inferiors.
The cultists blame race mixing for turning the Aryans into ordinary mortals. But they still put Aryans at the top of a rigid race hierarchy, with all other peoples ranked beneath them.
I mean, the idea that you belong to a superior race, this is extremely seductive. And of course, it is very creepy.
Such views imply the existence of racial types who are a definite drag on the gene pool, definitely culture-destroying types, and the Jew belonged at the very bottom of that particular scale of being.
The two ends of this warped racist hierarchy, Aryan and Jew, are doomed to be locked in eternal conflict.
The fact that it sounds completely irrational doesn't mean we shouldn't take it seriously. I think that's very important, because these ideas were actually embraced by a lot of reasonable, you might say, Germans.
It's 1918. Germany is reeling from catastrophic defeat in World War I. A desperate, humiliated people look for easy answers, and fringe ideas move into the mainstream. Aryan cults grow fast, and in 1919, members of one of them launch a political party. The new party grows rapidly. It calls itself the National Socialist German Workers' Party, better known as the Nazi Party.
The Nazi Party inherited from these secret Aryan cults a key belief in the superiority of the Aryan race. The Aryans were the master race, and they had one vital, vicious enemy, the Jews. So this pairing, this idea of the Aryans and their shadow or double, the Jew, became a central part of Nazi ideology.
One of the party's first recruits is a 30-year-old ex-army corporal who before World War I had been a failing artist in Vienna. Charismatic and ruthless, he quickly becomes party leader and sets the Nazis on a meteoric rise to power. His name, Adolf Hitler. Meet the SS elite troopers, the toughest and most fanatical Nazis of them all. They are the backbone of Adolf Hitler's power, striking terror into all opponents. But these SS men are more than just soldiers. They are priests who live by the second Nazi gospel. This is the Teutoburg Forest in the very heart of Germany. In 1933, the leader of the SS, Heinrich Himmler, travels here to find a spiritual home for the Nazi cult. He decides a 500-year-old monument is the perfect place. Wewelsburg Castle.
The castle was in a state of disrepair, and repairs and renovations were put in hand. The plans for the northern tower were the most impressive and ambitious.
In the northern tower, Himmler constructs what he calls the Hall of the SS Generals.
His idea was to create that as the Vatican, as the spiritual center of the Third Reich. That was going to be, as he called it, the middle point of the world. This was the axis on which the entire world would spin, would be this essentially creepy castle. You cannot imagine something more Dracula-esque.
The marble floor is inlaid with an intricate and mysterious pagan symbol, the Black Sun.
This Black Sun symbol could be identified with some kind of cosmic symbol and exploding power from a center.
Below the hall, in the basement, is a still more mysterious chamber called the Gruft, meaning crypt.
When they died, Himmler's idea was that the SS officers would be cremated and their urns would be kept in the basement, in the lower floor at Wewelsburg, in special niches, 12 niches around the central location, so that people could go there and meditate and reconnect with the ashes and with the legacy of the SS, and through the SS back to the ancient kings of Germany.
The SS began in the early days of the Nazi Party. A political movement born in 1919 in the chaos that followed Germany's catastrophic defeat in World War I.
When the war was lost, right, there was an enormous financial crisis. And that leads to a complete breakdown of values, of beliefs.
The crisis brings on hyperinflation. People's life savings are suddenly wiped out.
Their pensions have become worthless. They have to carry often, entire buckets full of money just to buy a loaf of bread and so on.
The Nazis blamed Germany's war defeat on a conspiracy by communists and Jews and appeal to national pride.
The Nazis gave Germans a good impression. They weren't like communists, disheveled, seedy looking often, undisciplined. They were smart looking.
Despising the compromises of a democracy, they promise a new kind of politics with strong leadership and military glory.
So the Germans saw in this party almost anything that they wanted to see in it. This is the secret of its success.
To speed up their rise to power, the Nazis use violence. Gangs of trained thugs intimidate, beat up, and even murder political opponents. The most fanatical of these gangs is the SS, or Schutzstaffel, meaning protection squad. Rising fast in the SS is Heinrich Himmler.
In the year 1929, I was ordered by the Führer to take over the leadership of all SS units in the entire Reich, then 280 men in total, and to change them into a reliable, elite organization for the party.
Heinrich Himmler was born in 1900 to a lower middle-class family in the south of Germany.
Well, Himmler was not really the archetype of the Aryan Superman. He was not blonde, he was not tall, he was not strong. In fact, he was just the opposite of all of those things. He made up for that by being the kind of kid in the class who everybody fears most. He became the snitch, informing on his classmates to his father, the headmaster, and causing his father, the headmaster, to describe him as a born criminal.
When he is 19, Himmler goes to Munich University to study farming. Graduating in 1923, he can't get a job. With time on his hands, he dedicates himself to Nazi politics and studies the ideas of the secret Aryan cults.
Himmler's obsessed with the idea that there was an ancient master race that over the course of time had become corrupted, but that could be purified again, this race, could be strengthened again.
Shortly after Himmler becomes SS leader, in 1929, the Nazi Party gets a big boost from the Wall Street crash and Great Depression, which sweeps the globe. Germany is already in economic trouble. Now, it goes from bad to worse. The Nazis are ready to exploit it.
Their pitch, in fact, their sort of endlessly recited slogan is Germany Awaken. So in a way, Germany had fallen asleep, if you want.
According to the Nazis, Germany needs to be awakened by a new kind of leader. Then, in the 1933 election, the party wins the largest share of votes. Hitler is appointed chancellor and begins to tighten his grip on the country. Next to Hitler is Heinrich Himmler and the SS.
Adolf Hitler has set the goal for our generation to be a new beginning. He has been predestined by the German karma to save the world's Germanic culture.
In the new Nazi state, Himmler's SS organization takes control of national security and the police. That is just the beginning.
Himmler had much bigger, more ambitious ideas for what the SS could become beyond a mere protective and police force. His ideas for the SS was that it should become the ideological elite of Germany.
The SS, which began as guards, as police, as thugs, suddenly was becoming molded into something a lot more elite, a lot more intense.
Never forget, we are a knightly order, from which one cannot withdraw, to which one is recruited by blood, and within which one remains body and soul.
Himmler's inspiration, the medieval knightly orders, like the Templars or the Teutonic Knights, or even King Arthur's mythical Knights of the Round Table.
But increasingly his ideas began to almost pick up on earlier ideas of chivalry or a knighthood, that the SS would be almost like the new super knighthood of Nazi Germany.
The diary of a young SS recruit reveals the appeal of this new Nazi order of knights.
I was overcome with a burning desire to belong to these people. I wanted to escape from my childish, narrow life, and I wanted to attach myself to something that was great and fundamental.
Those deemed to be heroes of the SS are awarded the most prized symbol of their knightly order, the Death's Head Ring.
I bestow upon you the Death's Head Ring of the SS. The runes opposite the Death's Head are holy signs from our past, with which we have been newly reconnected through the philosophy of National Socialism. Wear your ring with honor.
These rituals set you up to be more obedient, to be less critical of things they're doing. You get used to doing things without question, things that look kind of different or weird. So later on, if your group gets you to do something a little bit against your personal morals as they used to be, you're farther removed from that. You don't even remember when you had your own ideas of how to do things.
By 1935, Wewelsburg Castle is established as the center of the SS cult. Their rituals can begin in earnest. These are drawn from mysterious pagan beliefs. Beliefs, the Nazis say, were practiced in Germany thousands of years ago. This is the third Nazi gospel. The gospel of the pagan gods. In 1933, the Nazis seize power in Germany. Adolf Hitler wields ultimate power, and next to him, Heinrich Himmler, leader of the Nazis' elite troopers, the SS. Hitler is the political mastermind. Himmler is the architect of a religious revival meant to replace German Christianity with paganism.
Himmler believed that the pagan gods were actual living creatures who had existed and perhaps still existed in the world and had magnificent superpowers. He believed in superpowers.
Heinrich Himmler was born in 1900. As a young man, he went through spiritual torment.
The period in our youth was a period of much inner difficulty, inner rejection and struggle. My father was, according to family tradition, a convinced Christian, but we didn't speak about religion, with the exception of discussions about the political perniciousness and corrupting effects of the Christian church, on which we were as one.
Now Himmler is in power. It's payback time.
The Nazis, in a nutshell, are trying to undo 2 millennia of Christian humanist history.
We must turn our gaze back to that golden time when our Nordic ancestors of the New Stone Age erected those mighty standing stones 3 to 4 millennia before Christ.
For Himmler, to be German meant to be an ancient German, an ancient pagan German. He believed in all of this quite sincerely. He was a New Age person of his time.
Himmler was in a supreme position, actually, to put these, in our views, perhaps crackpot ideas into practice.
In the middle of a forest in central Germany, these are the Externsteine, the outside stones.
These are 5 weirdly shaped columns rising up out of the forest. To the Nazis, this was a sacred spot to them. The church tried to turn it into a kind of Christian site for a while. There's carvings on the stones with Christian motifs. But to the Nazis, this was really a pagan site of pagan worship. It is the German Stonehenge for the most part.
According to Nazi researchers, this place was once the site of blood rituals.
Every esoteric system of religion recognized human sacrifice as indispensable in appeasing the divinity. What we call execution today is the last remnant of bloody human sacrifice.
Human sacrifice was definitely part of the whole worldview. Human sacrifice was perfectly acceptable. Civilizations had performed human sacrifice all over the world. The Aztecs, the Mayas. We have examples of human sacrifice in Europe and in Africa and in Asia. The shedding of this blood was something that the gods demanded and something the gods needed.
Himmler considers the area around the Externsteine the most authentically pagan part of Germany. Just a few miles away is Wewelsburg Castle, his new SS headquarters. In 1935, the pagan rituals begin. Rituals designed by self-styled expert pagan Karl Maria von Willigut.
Karl Maria Willigut was a former Army officer who had been in and out of mental institutions and was sort of the archetype of the crazy guy with crazy ideas.
Willigut believes he is a reincarnation of ancient Aryan kings.
Willigut told Himmler that he was able to recall all of his incarnations going back 10,000 years. He had total perfect recall of every incarnation, which meant, of course, he also had total perfect recall of ancient Germany, of the German pagan religion at the time of the Paleolithic era and before the coming of the Romans.
And Heinrich Himmler, the second most powerful man in Nazi Germany, believes him.
Here was the guy who was going to help him recreate Nazi paganism because the guy could remember it.
Himmler recruited Willigut under the cover name of Weistor onto his personal staff. Willigut, Weistor, was able to supply his new master with examples of ancient Aryan runic spells, prayers, rituals, and of course, above all, his own memories of tribal life extending back through thousands of years. And this was absolute manna to Himmler. He felt he had a direct link to the ancient Germanic past.
Willigut tells Himmler he can think back 228,000 years to a world depicted in this German 1920s film, full of monsters and dwarfs and mythical creatures, and ruled over by Aryan giants.
This is something very common to the Nazi ideology, that there was a race of giants in the old days, and that the Aryans might have been giants, and that it was time for the Aryans to become giants again. Himmler was incorporating this into his religion of the SS.
It's all part of the Nazi plan. Deny historical facts and return to ancient myths and legends, setting the scene for the next Nazi gospel, the gospel of Aryan history. Wewelsburg Castle, in the heart of Germany, a center for the Nazis' SS elite and the pagan rituals they're developing here. The SS leader Heinrich Himmler wants to turn back the clock, modeling Nazi Germany on its fabled past.
We want to show the German people that our past is more than 1,000 years old. We want to show that Germany is more eternal than Rome, which is already 2,000 years old.
It's Midsummer Day 1935. Young SS men have gathered in a forest for a bizarre pagan ritual.
If you were to create a new religion and to root it in paganism, this is what you'd expect.
This is a solstice festival, an important celebration in pagan times.
Solstice festivals were important to the Nazi ritual calendar, just like religious festivals are important to a Christian or any other religious calendar.
In pre-Christian times, the summer solstice festival celebrated the triumph of light over darkness and life over death. The winter solstice festival celebrated the return of the light in the darkness of winter.
Christmas, Easter, all of that's out the window. What you're doing is you're going back to the ancient pagan holidays, and the pagan holidays were sun-worshipping holidays.
The German people have once again turned away from Christian theories and Christian teaching, which has troubled Germany for more than 1,000 years and caused the racial decay of the German people, and almost its racial death.
The SS men are carrying garlands of leaves, traditional pagan symbols of fertility. At the climax of the solstice ceremony, they throw the garlands into the flames. The burning symbolizes the rise of Germany, as expressed in this poem, written for SS recruits to sing.
Struggle is the answer.
until Germany, unified once again, arises from her chains. Flames consume the hateful barrier which today still separates brother from brother. Flames light the hearts of us all and throw a blazing torch into the land.
The Nazis also established festivals celebrating German history and culture. In this elaborate pageant, men are dressed as medieval knights. Next to them are the modern-day knights of the SS.
A lot of the sense of German national identity really is based on history, and the Nazis play on that, right? They want to sort of recreate, or they want to instill a new form of national identity, so they pick certain bits and bobs from the German past that sort of suits their particular gospel.
Close to Wewelsburg Castle, Himmler's SS headquarters, is the Teutoburg Forest. Here are the ancient standing stones known as the Externsteine, and close by, a huge monument to an ancient hero, Hermann the German.
The Teutoburger Forest is full of ancient Germanic mythology. It was there that Hermann, the ancient Germanic warrior, defeated the Roman legionaries of Varus in 9 AD.
Hermann's crushing victory over the invading legions of the Roman Empire meant Rome never conquered the German tribes. This 1920s film celebrates his life. For the Nazis, Hermann is the archetypal Aryan hero.
Hero worship, the admiration of the soldier, glorification of combat. There is a rich legacy on which the Nazis could draw.
Nazi history lacks one crucial ingredient: evidence. So finding some becomes an obsession of SS leader Heinrich Himmler. He turns Wewelsburg Castle into the headquarters of a new SS unit, the Ahnenerbe.
Anybody that's seen Raiders of the Lost Ark knows about the Ahnenerbe. The Nazis who were searching for the Ark of the Covenant were pulled directly out of the archives of the Ahnenerbe.
If you were a scholar and you couldn't get a job at a regular university, you could probably find a job with the Ahnenerbe. All you had to do was toe the line and come up with the same ideas that Himmler wanted to hear. He wanted to hear about paganism. He wanted to hear about ancient religions and mystery cults. He loved all of that stuff.
The SS Ahnenerbe quickly becomes the center for Nazi academics. These Nazi intellectuals aim to challenge the traditional universities and their so-called Jewish-influenced ideas.
You must choose, and right now, whether you want to be with us or against us. Watch out. Come over to our side before it is too late.
Nazi academics make detailed studies of what they say is authentic Aryan culture. In particular, they fix on the ancient writings known as runes. Runes are widely found across Northern Europe and date from pre-Christian times. Their meaning is often mysterious, but the Nazis believe they can unlock their secrets.
Only runes still whisper what is true on this earthly sphere. The runes whisper to our folk, for they possessed it first. Rune knowledge is pounding in our hearts.
The Ahnenerbe's job is to peddle Nazi theories and then do some archaeology to try to back them up. Their efforts take them across Germany.
Der Reichsführer SS Heinrich Himmler.
Here, Himmler visits an Ahnenerbe dig near Berlin.
Have the following researched. Find all the places in the Germanic, Aryan cultural world where we can see evidence of the concept of a lightning bolt coming from a thrown hammer, as well as sculptures of the god Thor depicted with a small hand axe emitting lightning. Please collect all the pictorial, sculptural, written, and mythological evidence of this. I am convinced this is not based on natural thunder and lightning, but rather that this is an early, highly developed war weapon of our forefathers.
The Ahnenerbe quickly find just the right evidence.
When we dig into the German soil, at points along the edge of a field, we find just a few hands' width beneath the surface, precious copper, silver, and gold pieces. The quality of their workmanship, artistry, and classical beauty is difficult even for us modern, technologically very advanced men to achieve.
It's all nonsense. Himmler's Ahnenerbe are just feeding him the stories he wants to hear.
This was Germany. This was the land of tremendous culture, tremendous science. And suddenly it went off the rails into this other area, this area of race science, believing in Atlantis, believing in mystical powers. This was something that's almost impossible for us to understand today, that the man who ran the most dreaded secret police force history had known, this guy believed in all of these impossible things. It's important for us to understand.
The archaeological adventures of the SS are only just beginning. Heinrich Himmler has set his heart on finding a legendary relic which has fascinated writers and scholars throughout history. The Holy Grail. In the 1930s, Wewelsburg Castle in Germany is the headquarters of the Nazi SS. Their leader, Heinrich Himmler, models them on an order of medieval knights, like King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. Wewelsburg is the Nazi Camelot, and like King Arthur before him, Himmler sends his men on a quest for an ancient religious relic.
What is Wewelsburg Castle and a Camelot without a Holy Grail? So obviously Himmler was very serious about getting the Grail and installing it at Wewelsburg.
The Holy Grail is the cup said to have been used by Jesus at the Last Supper. Some stories also say it was used to collect drops of Christ's blood as he bled on the cross. It fascinated medieval Europeans who said it possessed magical powers to heal the sick and grant eternal life. It meant something else to the Nazis.
The Grail was not the cup that Christ used at the Last Supper. It was not the cup that caught Christ's blood at the crucifixion. To Himmler, the Holy Grail was a pagan relic. It was an ancient cup, or perhaps an ancient stone, that had tremendous occult power.
Otto Rahn is a young German historian who researches into the Holy Grail. His work comes to the attention of Himmler's advisor on the occult, Karl Maria von Willigut, and he is about to change Rahn's life forever.
Otto Rahn was making his way as a freelance writer when one day Willigut got in touch with Rahn, who was very interested in his book. Willigut brought Rahn to Himmler's attention, and Himmler was fascinated. Himmler asked to meet Rahn, and Himmler made Rahn an offer he couldn't refuse. How about becoming a full-paid author on the SS payroll? Rahn was a penniless freelance, and he took the bait. He started working for the SS.
Ron travels to the ancient ruined castle of Montségur in the Pyrenees Mountains of southern France. This was the last stronghold of a Christian heretic sect called the Cathars in the Middle Ages. The Cathars were ruthlessly persecuted by the mainstream church, but legends say they were also the secret guardians of the Grail.
There has always been an undercurrent in popular mythology that this Holy Grail was discovered by Crusaders during the 11th century and brought back to Europe.
In the year 1244, an army of the French king laid siege to Montségur to try and stamp out the Cathar heretics. After many months, the Cathars surrendered and were massacred below the hill. 220 men, women, and children were burned in a huge bonfire. But according to stories Ron hears from local people, a handful of Cathars escaped the siege by climbing over the castle wall during the final battle, carrying the sacred relic of their faith. Some say that this sacred relic was the Holy Grail.
The Cathars had let a few people escape with the Grail down the side of the mountain, and then it was buried somewhere in the caves near Montségur.
Spurred on by the local legends, Ron begins exploring the mysterious cave system deep beneath Montségur. Could the Cathars have hidden the Holy Grail here 700 years before?
Well, he found evidence of Cathar habitation in the caves. He did find writings on the walls that suggested the Cathars had been there and that they had hidden something there.
Back in Wewelsburg, Himmler builds a special chamber and names it the Grail Room.
If I'm Otto Rahn, I'm scared to death. I cannot afford to disappoint Heinrich Himmler. I've got to show some kind of progress. I've got to show I'm on the right path. If I don't, my days are numbered. You can imagine what it's like to have that kind of pressure on you. You're given an impossible task. You're given a task that no one has been able to accomplish. No one has found the lost Ark of the Covenant in the famous Indiana Jones hunt for the Raiders of the Lost Ark. No one found the Lost Ark. No one found the Holy Grail. No one's found these things. And now Heinrich Himmler tells you you have to. I mean, you know you're doomed. You know you're doomed from the outset.
Ron sends reports back to Himmler. He says he has found clues that he's on the right track. But he's nowhere near the right track.
No one's sure if he was being taken for a ride by local French people who had a lot of people coming through looking for the Grail.
Ron gets desperate, spending more and more of Himmler's money in his fruitless hunt.
So you're going to go and spend as much time as possible looking in the caves and staying as far away as you can from Heinrich Himmler, until finally you're summoned back home and you don't have a choice. And you have to face the music. I would not have wanted to be Otto Rahn. That's not the kind of academic environment that you sort of look forward to becoming part of. You know, the SS telling you what you have to do.
Ron returns to Wewelsburg. Although Himmler accepts the disappointment, Ron knows the SS has no place for failure.
Ron was essentially an aesthete, an intellectual. He was also a homosexual, And these were things, of course, that wouldn't go down very well in the SS. So Rahn started to live a rather painful, awkward double life.
It is only a matter of time before Himmler finds out the truth about Rahn.
His homosexuality had become known, and Rahn asked to be released from the SS. It was almost unique that someone should actually ask to leave the SS. He walked into the mountains in the Tyrol one late afternoon in March 1939, and his body was found 6 months later, and it was evident that he had committed suicide there.
Rahn's death spells the end of the Nazi hunt for the Holy Grail. Himmler soon develops another obsession to try to prove the Nazis' race theories. He sends SS Ahnenerbe researchers to the very roof of the world, to the mysterious kingdom of Tibet.
We intend to study the current racial anthropological situation through measurements, trait research, photography, and molds, and to collect material about the proportion, origins, significance, and development of the Nordic race in this region.
The Nazi scientists cross some of the world's most extreme landscapes, traveling on horseback through the Himalaya mountains and across the high desert of the Tibetan Plateau. The SS are searching for traces of their lost ancestors, the mythical race of Aryan supermen.
Himmler was convinced that the ancient Aryans had settled in Tibet as some kind of asylum due to rising floods across the world, and that Tibet therefore betrayed remarkable remains of ancient Aryan civilization.
You have to remember that in the 1920s and 1930s, there was a lot of mystification about Tibet, and the lamas had mystical powers. This was very important to the Nazis, that the Tibetan lamas had powers of levitation. They were able to withstand extremes of cold, walk through walls and see the future, see the past.
The SS studied Tibetan culture and analyzed the Tibetans' racial characteristics. What the Tibetans felt about this is not recorded.
A great deal of time was directed to measuring the Tibetans' bodies, the size of their skulls, the size of their arms, in order to establish whether they had some kind of racial relationship to the Aryans and Europeans.
Since the Aryans have never existed, of course the Nazis failed to find much trace of them, however hard they tried.
Himmler was probably disappointed that there wasn't evidence for ancient Aryans in Tibet, but he contented himself with the report, which was beautifully bound up with SS insignia and presented formally.
Unlike Otto Rahn, the Tibet researchers are rewarded for failure. They are each presented with death's head rings, a sign of their eternal bond to the SS and their faith in the Nazi Gospels. Especially to the most important of all, the Gospel of the Führer, Adolf Hitler. In the 1930s, Germans of all ages are taken in by the Nazis' cult-like process of manipulation and brainwashing.
The Nazi Party was not a political party the way we understand it. It was a cult, and you're being indoctrinated into a cult. You're being brainwashed into a cult.
You were able to produce an environment with propaganda and manipulation of people's emotions that got them to do unbelievable things.
It's 1934, and Germany's self-styled savior is flying to the small city of Nuremberg. 250,000 people are streaming there to greet him. This famous documentary, Triumph of the Will, shows him descending from the clouds like a demigod. The whole city is excited. The Führer, Adolf Hitler, has arrived.
My relatives in Munich have talked about this when I was a child. somebody said, let's take in a Hitler, speech, because you could be sure that this would be quite an experience. The songs, the marches, and the enthusiasm of the crowd, and the way in which Hitler massaged audiences, of how he had them in the palm of his hands.
Deutschland!
Eager young Nazis sing songs and poems in Hitler's honor.
If you ask us for all we have, we will give it to you. Because we believe in you. We swear allegiance to you. No one can break this oath. Even you. Only death can break it.
The crowds mass at a vast stadium on the outskirts of the city. Waves of excitement grip the Nazi faithful.
From 1,000 eyes, the last hope glimmered. From 1,000 hearts, a mute cry broke forth. The Führer. Make us into vassals. Lord. Set us free.
They must have been ecstatic experiences. They swept people away, and they emerged reinvigorated with a new sense of duty and, purpose, like going to High Mass, or a football game, or a rock festival, which carries people away like zombies. They forget their individuality, and they begin to scream in unison. As Hitler put it, alone the individual is just a tiny little worm. But in the mass, he becomes a huge dragon.
Clearly, Nazism is using a huge amount of religious liturgy and symbolism in its theatrical appearances, harnessing people's natural desire for religious practice or devotion into this new secular form.
Hitler drew on a long tradition of beliefs in savior types, and was in fact adored and even worshipped as a savior type.
Cutting-edge technology brings the cult of the Führer to all Germans, even those who never make it to Nuremberg itself.
The use of film was very effective to reach people that weren't even at the rallies, to broaden that audience so that they're having that experience too, even though they're not there. They feel like they're there. They feel like they're part of it.
Nazi filmmakers create masterpieces of manipulation.
When you see these masses in front of you, you're almost as empowered as Hitler must have been, standing up there on the podium looking down on the masses, right? This is this strong sense of empowerment. But then the camera cuts and you're looking up to Hitler again and you see him standing there on the podium. You're put in the place of the masses again, right? So you're feeling subjected almost, lying prostrate there in front of the Führer. You're supposed to feel that you're nothing in this new Nazi world, right? You're only meaningful insofar as you can give your life and your all to the Führer and indeed to National Socialism.
Germans are taught to worship Hitler from birth. German boys have little choice but to join the Hitler Youth, undergoing military-style training and political indoctrination. Girls are encouraged to join too and learn what the Nazis consider are useful feminine skills. Everyone in Germany is taught to use the Reich's official greeting.
Heil Hitler!
It calls on the Führer to heal Germany's ills.
In German, Nazis said Heil. Heil in German means not just hail, like Hail Caesar. It means heal.
The gospel of the Führer is stronger than any law, even the laws of nature. The Nazis twist science to fit their evil worldview And that is the next Nazi gospel. In the late 1930s, Adolf Hitler's Nazi Party wields total power in Germany. Every aspect of life must bend to the Nazi worldview, including science.
If you can imagine, these were the people running the country. These were the people running one of the best military operations the world had ever known. These were people who were developing weapons of mass destruction. And yet these were people who were psychotic. They didn't need scientific proof for what they believed in.
Prior to the Nazis taking power, Germany had had as many Nobel Prize science laureates as any country, perhaps more than most. The problem that the Nazis had with that was the inconvenient truth that so many of these Nobel Prize laureates who had German nationality also were Jews.
At Berlin University, Albert Einstein has developed his theory of relativity, one of humanity's greatest intellectual leaps forward. But Einstein is Jewish, and to the Nazis, that means his theories must be incorrect. Einstein has explained the fundamental laws which govern the cosmos. The Nazis want an alternative. Step forward instead, eccentric physicist Hans Horbiger and his even more eccentric world ice theory.
At a time when crazy theories were flourishing in Germany, one that was characterized as perhaps the craziest of the craziest was Horbiger's world ice theory. The idea that the world, indeed the universe, had originated as a block of ice.
According to world ice theory, the Milky Way is a vast archipelago of icebergs thrown out at the beginning of time when a giant block of ice crashed into the sun in an icy Big Bang. Nazi academics make this fantastic theory the official state cosmology.
While Hitler cleans up politics, Hans Horbiger will take care of the false sciences. The doctrine of the eternal ice will herald the regeneration of the German people.
It is absolutely, totally crazy. There's no basis in any kind of reality for it. It doesn't explain the sun, which does not appear to us to be a big ball of ice, but which did to Horbiger. Horbiger thought the sun was a big ball of ice.
Ice theory has one big plus for the Nazis, and their racist view of the universe.
After all, they came from the land of ice and snow. So this was their origin. Their origin was in ice. Ice was beautiful. Ice was glorious. It was white, anyway. And that sort of fit right in with the racial theories as well, without putting too fine a point on it.
World ice theory is pretty extreme, even for the Nazis. Nazi officials concede that it's possible to be a true National Socialist without believing in ice theory. But it is compulsory to believe in the central tenet of Nazism, the Aryan master race.
We are, as we can assert with pride, based on the most recent, careful, racial research, the oldest people on Earth.
Nazi academics describe an ancient golden age ruled over by Aryans.
Blood and land, home and leader, a sun-filled year, and above all the gods and fate. To these, as well as to their secular authorities, did our ancestors willingly and not slavishly submit.
The Nazi dream is to bring back this imaginary golden age and rebuild the Aryan master race through selective breeding.
The Germanic people are the culmination of fate and history, developed from long ago, from primeval times, through many generations and centuries. From this people, With variously mixed hereditary factors, we consciously select those with the Nordic Germanic blood, since we can assume this blood to be the carrier of the life-supporting characteristics of our people.
Heinrich Himmler is the driving force behind this Aryan breeding project. He considers his SS troopers to be ideal breeding stock. He controls every aspect of their sex lives, marriage, and families.
The thing about cult leaders wanting to control weddings is that if you control the more personal and private aspects of people's lives, it gives you a lot of power. If you can control marital relations, if you can control sexuality, if you can control people's money, all these things are very personal and private ways of gaining control over people.
To create our order, we went about it like a plant breeder trying to reproduce a good ancient strain which has been adulterated and debased. We selected again and again and discarded those who were not suitable.
Every SS man represented courage, military prowess, and pure blood, and his matching, his finding, and a suitable Aryan bride was an important part of guaranteeing his progeny, his descent. And therefore, marriage was a kind of pact to produce plenty of Aryan children.
We are obligated, whenever we meet, to deliberate on our principles of blood, selection, and hardness. The law of nature is evenly this: that which is hard, which is strong, is good.
This archive film shows the Nazi breeding project at work. These innocent babies are all produced by it. Their parents brought together to build up the master race and make it ready to rule the world.
According to the Nazi Gospels, you can only successfully engage in this war of global conquest if you have purified your own race, right? Right now, the way that Germany is in the 20s and 30s, right, it's corrupted, right? So it will take years, literally, of breeding, of reconstruction to create a race strong enough to wage that war.
Throughout the years, the process of breeding and blood selection must be continued, accompanied by the elimination of those unsuited to us because of character, willpower, and hence, the blood.
Once the Aryans are restored to their ancient glory, the Nazis dream they can once again rule over all the lesser races. To do that, during the 1930s, Hitler builds up the world's most powerful military machine. His goal, to enslave the lesser races in a German empire that will last for 1,000 years. It's time to open the Nazi gospel of race war. The Nazis see themselves as the Aryan master race, their rightful destiny to rule the world.
War is an integral part of the Nazi Gospels in the sense that races will always collide, will always conflict. It's a struggle for survival. You cannot simply coexist. You have to assert yourself militarily.
The Nazi belief in conflict between races comes from a twisted interpretation of one of the greatest insights in all science, Charles Darwin's theory of evolution.
Darwin wrote about the survival of the fittest, which meant that the weakest was left behind. This played right into the Nazi racial theories. They believed that they were the fittest.
In Charles Darwin's theory, species adapt to their environment, and those who do so best, what he called the fittest, survive and prosper the most. This process of constant adaptation and development explains the wonderful variety of the natural world. But Darwin had nothing to say about different human races. For him, human beings are just one particularly successful species.
His doctrines were distorted in this sense. There is a natural selection taking place, a ceaseless conflict. What Darwin seemed to have done was to authorize the idea of struggle, conflict. Nature is red in tooth and claw.
If you believe in a racial theory, a theory of evolution, then you have only two ways to go. Either you're part of the problem or you're part of the solution. You're either part of the inferior race that's going to be left behind, or you're part of the superior race, you're part of the next stage in evolution that's going to control the world, that's going to inherit the earth.
For the Nazis, an example of competition between races is sports, especially in the 1936 Olympic Games in Berlin. Hitler believes his Olympics will showcase Aryan superiority. This propaganda film of the German training camp idealizes the Aryan physique. Only prime specimens could represent Germany. Some of the German training is bizarre, but the Nazis take the Olympics very seriously. Unfortunately for Hitler, the Olympics don't turn out as his theories predicted. African-American athlete Jesse Owens wins 4 gold medals, including the 100 meters sprint. But according to Nazi theory, athletics is just a trial run for the real competition between races: war. By the summer of 1939, Hitler has pushed Europe to the brink of conflict. Britain and France have tried to keep the peace, but peace has no place in the Nazi Gospels.
If war is the norm and produces the great innovations and the great heroic virtues, then peace, eternal peace, is the end of civilization.
On September 1st, 1939, Hitler's armies strike east into Poland. Great Britain and France have promised the Poles their support. Now they issue an ultimatum to Hitler: pull out of Poland or we'll go to war. It is no deterrent.
Hitler saw himself as a kind of messiah. Hitler believed that he was going to bring about the salvation for the rest of the human race. This is what they had to do. You don't become a messiah and stay home. You've got to spread the word.
On September 3rd, Britain and France declare war on Germany. The Second World War begins in earnest. Over the next 6 years, it will rage on 4 continents and claim 61 million lives.
Nazism is like a shark that has to move to stay alive, really, right? That has to continuously engage in warfare. Peaceful coexistence is not really part of the program.
They were going to subjugate the peoples of the world. This was their game plan. Europe first. After that, the rest of the world was on the plate. He left Asia to the Japanese. He left North America by itself and South America by itself for now. But he had instituted a network of German associations throughout North and South America. He was prepared to overtake and overthrow those governments in the Americas as well.
Hitler's next move, after Poland, is attacking Western Europe in May 1940, sweeping through the Netherlands and Belgium and quickly crushing France. The British are driven back across the English Channel. Total Nazi domination in Europe seems assured. Only Churchill's defiance and the heroic victory by Britain's Royal Air Force in the Battle of Britain halts the Nazi advance. It's Hitler's first defeat, but quickly he turns his attention to a grander plan. In June 1941, he launches a massive invasion of the Soviet Union. A series of titanic battles and stunning victories make many Germans feel as if they really are the master race. By winter, Hitler's men are at the gates of Moscow. At this critical moment, the madness of Nazi science helps change the course of history.
Somehow the Nazi world ice people and all their weather forecasters had predicted that winter in Russia that year would have been mild. So the Nazi army, the Wehrmacht, shows up to fight Russia wearing summer uniforms in the winter, in a Russian winter. And then what happened, of course, was one of the worst winters on record, and the German soldiers were dying through exposure and frostbite like crazy, and it was a terrible disaster for the German army, based upon crackpot science.
It's not the only way crackpot Nazi theories help seal Germany's fate. According to the Nazi Gospels, Hitler's attack on the Soviet Union makes perfect sense. The Nazis consider the Russian Slavs an inferior race, and the conquest of the East to be Aryan destiny. In reality, by attacking the Soviet Union in the summer of 1941 and declaring war on the United States 6 months later, Hitler takes on more enemies than he can handle. Soon he is facing the combined might of the USA, Russia, and the British Empire. Still, it will take 3 years for the Allies to crush Germany from east and west. 3 years during which the Nazi race war will lead to the most shocking crimes in history. Crimes that are the logical conclusion of all the Nazi Gospels. And the warped ideas first developed in the secret Aryan cults.
The link between the secret Aryan cults and the Holocaust is really buried in the Aryan master race and their battle, their struggle against Jews. Once the Aryans and the Jews had been paired off, as if you like, battling archetypes in some kind of cosmic battle, it was easy for the secret Aryan cults and the resultant Nazi ideology to identify the Jews' destruction as the only solution, the final solution to Aryan world rule.
Hitler's victories bring nearly 9 million Jews under Nazi control. Now the Nazis have the chance to finish their so-called race war once and for all. This final solution will be the work of Himmler's SS. They pioneer the mass killings of civilians, concentration camps, and gas chambers. The final Nazi gospel is the most terrible of them all. It is the gospel of genocide. The Nazis see World War II as a war between the Aryan master race, the Germans, and the lesser races, such as the Russians and other Slavs, and especially the Jews. For Heinrich Himmler, this is the final battle in a titanic conflict that's been going on for thousands of years.
As long as there have been men on Earth, the struggle between human races and subhuman races has been the historical norm. This Jewish-led war against the German people has belonged to the natural course of life on our planet as long back as we can see.
In Hitler's newly conquered territories, Himmler's SS are tasked with finishing this race war once and for all by exterminating the Jews. The Nazis call this the final solution.
They believed they were saving the human race by eliminating those people who were keeping it back from evolution. It's an astonishingly sinister concept, and all we have to do is look at the progress of the war to understand how seriously they took this concept.
The first mass killings take place in the forests of Eastern Europe in 1941. Himmler's SS task forces herd men, women, and children towards death pits and shoot them by the thousand without pause or pity. In a chilling speech made to SS officers in 1943, at the height of the Holocaust, Himmler tells his killers to be proud of their work.
Most of you will know what it means when 100 corpses are lying side by side, or 500, or 1,000. To have stuck that out and to have remained decent, that is what has made us tough. This is a glorious page in our history.
A letter by a 22-year-old SS recruit, Karl Kretschmer, to his family back in Germany, reveals his disgust at his own actions, but also shows how the Nazi Gospels strengthen his resolve.
I am in a very gloomy mood. I must pull myself out of it. The sight of the dead, including women and children, is not very cheering. It is a weakness not to be able to stand the sight of dead people. The best way of overcoming it is to do it more often. Then it becomes a habit. For the more one thinks about the whole business, the more one comes to the conclusion that it's the only thing we can do to safeguard unconditionally the security of our people and our future. Our faith in the Führer fulfills us and gives us the strength to carry out our difficult and thankless task.
The journey of young men like Kretschmer to the greatest evil imaginable is now complete.
I think the Nazi Gospels served as a motivator and as a means of justification. It justified spilling blood.
To take the pressure off the killing squads, the Nazi planners establish a more impersonal method of mass murder. A gigantic machine of trains, camps, and gas chambers. The Holocaust reaches its peak in 1944 as Hitler's Germany lurches towards defeat.
There was no military justification for keeping the death camps running right up until the end of the war. That tremendous drain on resources made no sense militarily. And yet they kept it going. They kept it going till the very end. These were true believers. If you truly believed in this ideology, you had no problem with the death camps.
As the Allied armies advance on Germany from east and west, they find the camps. As the full extent of Nazi atrocities is revealed, a horrified world asks, why? It still does.
It's only recently that historians have looked at the belief system within the SS, but within National Socialism more generally, as motivating factors. That people actually, the killers actually believed in what they were doing.
Historians ought to know about life and why people do what they do, and especially why they're capable of doing those gruesome, horrible things. And that's an area that historians have not wanted to go to. They don't want to go into the bowel of the beast.
On April 30th, 1945, with the war lost, Adolf Hitler commits suicide at his bunker in Berlin. On May 22nd, Heinrich Himmler is captured by the British and charged with war crimes. But before he can face a court, he swallows a cyanide pill. The Nazi Gospels die with them. Surviving Nazi leaders are prosecuted for war crimes. The trials take place in Nuremberg, chosen because it was the site of the Nazi mass rallies a decade earlier.
Deutschland, Sieg heil! Sieg heil! Sieg heil!
The war crimes trials help Germans face up to the atrocities committed in their name, and to begin to ask why so many of them put their faith in, or at least went along with, the Nazis' twisted dreams.
To understand what was happening in Germany between 33 and 45, the Nazi Gospels aren't just useful, they're absolutely essential.
Ideas do have consequences. Whether those ideas are bizarre or extreme or shabby or stupid or unbelievable, believe it, because people do believe in the unbelievable.
The power of evil and irrational ideas, and the way they can be used to try to justify terrible crimes, are the enduring testimony of the Nazi Gospels.